Blessings. My name is Byron Aon Mulligan, and I would like to share a story with you about my recent visit to St. Michael and All Angels Church in Dallas, Texas. As part of the work that I do, I travel to a number of countries around the world and will often attend churches, sacred space and ceremonial space across a number of belief systems and religions. Although in truth, home space for me, in terms of sacred ground, will really be anything consecrated under the Archmichael. That is what I consider home ground, and it is a point for me out of very deep personal and professional interest, connection and reverence that wherever I go in the world I tend to actively seek out home ground consecrated under the Archmichael. So having been in the US now for a little over a year, it was almost remiss of me to have not attended St. Michael and All Angels Church in Dallas, not being too far from where I am in East Texas now. And so after a year I finally got to attend this beautiful space in Dallas, and I had been looking forward to it for some time. I attended with my friend who had recently come down from Canada, who was also very interested in coming along with me. So we came along together. But he was really just tagging along with me. It is my great joy and flow to connect to spaces such as this and such as yours for the staff at St. Michael's. And Nathan was just connecting along with me to attend a space via God. I would share as part of the work that I do, and a little concedingly, that I guess I work in a slightly unorthodox manner. I am a 6'1" blonde Australian. I don't wear shoes too often. Little things that you might otherwise consider kind of inconsequential. It's not really very meaningful, but it can be to some people. And so when I attend sacred space, I attend as myself under authority of why I am there. However, will always show full respect of the venue and of the space that I am attending, of course understanding that first and foremost above all things this is a space of God, but it is equally a operational and business space and place where human beings do the do, where there are employees and expressions of spirit working side by side in sacred space. It is not lost on me that a church is many levels of a functioning space, but it is, first and foremost, God's house. And with that in mind, and with that in my heart, I attended St. Michael's with my friend. A practice that is very common for me, specifically attending Michael's space, is to consecrate water. It is simply a bottle of water that will walk into a church with me, and within the blessings of that space, under God and consecrated within the field of the Archangel Michael, that water is then blessed. Often water is then donated back to that space, of course, as a gesture, a simple gesture of where that has come from, but of course that water is then used effectively as you would know as holy water and as consecrated water, and used for purposes honouring that material and the function of that material, and that is also the nature of my work. So as I respectfully walked through the open doors of the beautiful cathedral at St. Michael's in Dallas, I removed my bag and my phone and anything not respectful to the space that I was in, and I carried in my cloth and a bottle of water, and I walked up to the front and sat my butt on the front of the steps, and I prayed and I connected, and I was probably there for a few minutes, and I would tell you that your space is most appropriate and most suitable for the energies in which you express under God and honour under God. Your place is beautiful, St. Michael's in Dallas. And so it was an honour and part of course for me to consecrate water under this roof and within this field. And so that is what I did, and that is what I do. It's about as harmless as it seems for people who don't know what that would look like. And of course that process is very different for different individuals, and I would say that I completely acknowledge and respect that the process that flows through me to achieve that outcome of consecrating any material, granted, would be a little different to the way that that is done within that, or probably most other churches, and I acknowledge that. However, certainly no harm done, no weirdness or shenanigans being had or anything of the sort. It is simply blessing water, and this is what I was doing. So I am in St. Michael's, blessing water, and a gentleman comes out from one of the side doors and looks at me and says, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" And I said, "Yes, thank you. I am okay, and no, I'm just fine. I just need a few minutes, and I'm just honouring your space." And he didn't seem very sure what to do with that, and that is fair enough. But again, it is home space and God space, and the front door was wide open, and I am welcome, and so here I am. And so he walks around to the other side of the stage, and a few minutes later, another lady comes out and asks the same question, but more inferring, like what I am doing in that space is not appropriate. And on the level in which she will be saying that, that is absolutely fair enough. And while, as part of course, I will openly acknowledge that in the work that I do in the movements, according to that, I move more so according to better to ask forgiveness than permission. But in full respect of where I am and the human aspect of that, I am on another human being or more human beings' working space also. And while I may not walk through the door under full glaze of permission, I will always maintain reverence and respect for anyone else who works there, because it would be utterly ignorant and remiss of me for doing so. And so when this lady quite politely said, "What you're doing is not really appropriate here, as I would understand it," and I paraphrase that, "of course you are welcome in this space and you are welcome to pray, but you seem to be doing something other than that," I paraphrase, "and I guess that's not really appropriate." And I said to her, "Absolutely, that is not a problem." And I moved my cloth and my water and so forth, and did basically as she requested, and quite reasonably so, out of respect, because that was fair enough, even though what I was doing was fair enough. However, I certainly took heed of her advice and her request, and began just packing up some of my gear, and not too long after that, I hear a voice behind me while I am in the cathedral, effectively facing the altar and finishing the work that I am there to do. And I hear a voice behind me, a gentleman's voice, saying, "Hello, gentlemen." And I'm already aware of what's actually happening. And so, while first and foremost I am there to honour God and express a process of consecration, I ensure that that act and what I was there to do first and foremost gets finished. So I don't lift my head straight away to see actually what's going on. But by the time I do, of course, there are now two extremely large, focused and armed police officers standing right in front of me, looking me quite keenly in the eye and obviously taking in this whole scene. So I would like to share a few facts about this before I finish this story. One is that two individuals from St. Michael's walked past within the space of 5 minutes around this event, and it was really only the second lady, who I believe may be the Reverend Lisa Musa. Lisa, my apologies if I've got your surname wrong. I believe that was Lisa Musa who I may have spoken to, and certainly was an expression of that space, and I would listen to anything that the Reverend Lisa Musa would have to say. I would, however, expect some degree of the same courtesy. But anyway, Lisa Musa then reappeared with these police officers, as well as the other man who had walked in previously, who I now know to be Tracy Stegall, I believe Assistant Operations Manager of that facility. And within the space of maybe 10 minutes, to be perfectly honest, not only was really any serious concern conveyed as to what was going on, but within the blink of an eye, two very focused police officers were within a metre or two of me saying, "I think you need to go." So I, of course, just introduced myself and explained a little of what I was doing, of course just conveying the obvious scenario that no harm was being done and something quite respectful and ceremonial was being done in sacred space, just stating to me the obvious, so that everyone just got some perspective. And then, of course, it was my intention, knowing that the police are only there on call and as part of duty, that really the issue began and ended with the folks that worked there, and specifically Tracy Stegall, who had called the police around this issue. And so, of course, again with respect and with right intent, I asked Tracy, "Are you sure? Like, do you not really see what is happening here, that there is no harm being done here, that this is absolutely in honour of God and St. Michael and the space that you hold? And really, could you please just give me 5 more minutes?" And Tracy was very, very clear to say to me, "Not a chance." Made it very clear. Wasn't interested in really speaking with me or connecting with me as a man of God from another country who had made specific intent to connect with their space. And so he really didn't appreciate, I guess, what I was doing or why I was there, nor did he give me any opportunity to explain that, or to really just have a few moments and to say, "This is what I'd like to do." Even so, certainly wouldn't give me just 5 minutes of his own time as a visitor from another country, to say, "Look, please, you may stand there if you require the police still. Like, please, if you would just give me 5 minutes, you will see what I am doing, and you will see." Not a chance. Nope, I really did need to go, apparently. My work in that space, in truth, had already been completed by the time Reverend Lisa Musa and Tracy Stilwell had come into that space. I had already consecrated water in that space. To be honest, it's consecrated by virtue of setting foot in the place. The ceremony is just an expression of honour. So, in truth, by the time all of this kind of incident or conversation ensued, I was really just in a space of honour and a space of thanks and a space of gratitude. I didn't really need to do anything more. So, for me personally, nothing was really interrupted. I was just holding a space of gratitude by the time this conversation occurred. But that was not really acceptable either. Absolutely nothing I was doing was acceptable. And it was very clear that that no one was budging, and I was to be escorted out of that building. The police officer said quite clearly, like, there is obviously no harm being done here. It was obvious to me also that he was quite baffled with this scenario. I'm sure he hadn't been called so urgently to such a benign and strange scene of concern, because there was obviously no concern going on here. But under the directives of the folks at St. Michael's, of course, I was escorted out of the building, and more so out of the building to my car, where I was informed, obviously as part of the situation, that if I was to attend that church or set foot on the grounds in any way, of course I would be charged for trespassing and so forth. And so the law well and truly came into play and so forth. And I got in my car and drove back past the front, and the police were still there watching to make sure that my car was completely out of sight. Just to make sure, obviously, that I hadn't changed my mind or I wasn't what I said I wasn't. St. Michael's shame on you. Tracy Stegall, shame on you. Reverend Lisa Musa, my apologies. Please open a little to understand and experience what occurred on that day. Please understand via the love in my heart and a light in my eyes that I meant no harm. I meant only respect to your space. But the fact that you did not see that, regardless of the unorthodox appearance or approach of my manner, the fact that neither of you really represented professionally your roles or your home space or the patriarch of your space, and that you dismissed your own authority in dealing with me, that was also a shame on both of you. But the thing that was really disturbing for me was that in less than 10 minutes, two very large, focused and armed police officers were in this church ready to walk me out the door. And that's where it got to, and that is where it escalated to in just no time at all. Texas, United States, it is a woeful state of affairs that you find yourself in when scenarios like this occur and run to their natural conclusion, where people are effectively chased off a ground for honouring that ground. I would challenge any of you at St. Michael's in Dallas, Texas, to re-evaluate your own alignment to the values of God and your space. For if you were aware of what was truly happening in that moment, you might have said all of the things that you said about a strange 6'1" blonde Australian, obviously performing some form of ceremony in your church. But I think you should have seen more than that, because that is your job. Tracy Stegall, it is not your job. You are staff and you are an employee. So you worked within your capacity. However, my friend, you worked mostly within your personal capacity. And that is a shame. I will remember you, and I will remember this experience as I return to Australia, and as I return back to my own home ground of St. Michael's, and I will recall this. I'm very sorry. Blessings to everyone at St. Michael's in Dallas, Texas. No harm, no foul, but hopefully an opportunity for learning.